to get started then?
Yep.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Michelle, for taking the time to chat with me today a bit more about your experience of the Helpline Standard. So just want to start off with a bit about you. So could you tell us a bit more about your organization and the helpline that you work with?
Yes, of course. Lovely to be here, Michelle. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, so we are, well, the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, and our national helpline has been in existence for over almost 40 years plus. And so we've grown obviously over the last number of decades. And yeah, so we've kind of obviously had the 24-hour mandate as such for a good number of years. And it's grown from strength to strength naturally because we did start off with X number of calls from previous reports, but now our helpline is taking almost up to 20,000 plus contacts per year. So it's quite significant. And I've been a part of the agency for over 20 years. So I've seen lots of changes in that for sure. Have a few war stories amongst all of that. But the helpline is my home, if you like. I've been a part of the helpline for a long, long time, all of my career here. And I team led the helpline staff for a good number of years and then was appointed manager in the last 3 years. So I oversee now the whole national helpline for the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre.
Yeah, amazing. It must be so interesting to have seen all the changes that have happened across the time you've been
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been phenomenal. And you can see like with societal changes again, obviously impact our helpline naturally. Huge media cases across the board. Each decade brings its own huge flurry of calls for sure. But yeah, seen a lot of changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with the helpline standard, so I know this year it was your third time achieving the
Yes.
standard. So considering all the changes that the organization's been through, it'd be really interesting to know kind of what made your organization want to undertake the standard to begin with.
Yeah, well, it's been something that we were aspiring to for quite some years
Mhm.
before we began it, essentially. And of course, like every NGO and in our world, in our sector, as most people be aware of, funding is obviously another aspect of it, which is a challenge. So before 2018, in fact, we had been considering it for quite some time. And again, resources, etc., and sustainability was considered. So all of these factors were built in. And so, yeah, just we had contemplated, we began our membership significantly before that. And then we had received contacts from yourselves for a good number of times, well before
Yes.
2018. And yeah, so it's been aspirational for us to do this. And it would have been slightly a resource issue, but we then decided that a concerted effort would be made to achieve the standard. We began with workshops as members, and we did workshops around Dublin. And then we travelled up north. There was a really excellent workshop that was held by you guys in the north in Belfast, and myself and some colleagues went up to attend that. We got a really good flavour of other helplines and their struggles from the UK and from Ireland. So it was really good to kind of start that whole networking process and to see the value of achieving the standard. And so, yeah, that was the beginning before just around that time. And but yeah, it was something that we absolutely wanted to achieve. We were conscious that it is helplines are so unique, and there wasn't a kind of replicate of a standard accreditation that we could see other than your good selves. So we were conscious that yeah, it was great to kind of see actually there is an accredited standard that we could achieve. And then looking into the ins and outs of it, we said, yeah, this is definitely our journey. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was a process, but certainly was on our agenda for quite some time.
Yeah, it's really interesting kind of hearing about how you engage with Helplines Partnership before and hearing about all the different networking that was going on and how that led you to undertake the standard. It's really interesting. And yeah, I have to agree. It's really nice that there's that specific standard for helplines. I think something we
Absolutely.
always talk about is that there isn't, a whole lot out there for helplines. So it's nice that we can kind of be there to fill the gap.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was really so opportune at the time. And whilst you're
Mm.
seeking again for to achieve more funding or anything around your services, having the accreditation is a huge coup to achieve. So yeah, we were very much on that path very early on in 18. We would have again, as I say, desired to have it sooner, but it was always on our agenda. So yeah, 2018
Yeah.
was the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I guess just to understand a bit more about how you find the process of putting together your submission. So, yeah, talk us through a little bit kind of how you found that process.
The very first time I think was a huge undertaking for us because like that we were beginning, like we had very good, robust policies and, kind of
Yeah.
process in place. However, when we began the first accreditation, it was a real, kind of opening up of actually, okay, we
Mm.
have them. How do we put them into the very specific spaces that they needed to be? So yeah, it was a very good exercise. Now, colleagues of mine who've since left began doing the administration piece in the beginning, whilst I was supplying them with the relevant data and they were pulling it together. So the first process, I wasn't administratively involved. So my colleagues, administration colleagues, were involved. We didn't have, in fact, some of the processes and systems we have in place now. For instance,
Yeah.
Microsoft. We had a static CRM system at the time, which was a Microsoft Office based one, but didn't have the capacity to be navigated outside of the building. So it wasn't web based. We also had our previous phone system was also quite limited and, well, I'll use the word archaic, but certainly got us through all of our years of business. But these were before a lot of the vast improvements that we've had since. So the first application was a real eye-opening experience for getting into all of that and looking at actually we're doing some things really, really well. However, I remember the lead assessor at the time was so helpful in guiding us through, well, actually, yes, that looks really good. However, you could do it like this and make it more streamlined. So yeah, that whole beginning of the process was a real eye-opening experience and it was really worthwhile. So then by the time our second application came along, we were way more kind of prepped and whatever. I remember we had an on-site assessment from the lead assessor who came to Dublin.
Yeah.
And that was really great because getting that interaction and talking to the teams. So I really enjoyed that process. Like I say, it was the beginning of really helping us to align exactly what was needed and also to see what other helplines were achieving
Yeah.
just in processes alone, which was really great to hear because you didn't feel on your own. You didn't
Yeah.
feel that, okay, well, this is not just unique to us. Other helplines are going through the same thing, the same challenges. So yeah, that really
Absolutely.
was, it was a great, we can see the rapid changes within the accreditation itself. So it was great.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds like your helpline really evolved during the time you've undertaken the accreditation those three times. So it's amazing to
Absolutely.
hear just how much the processes and policies have evolved just by going through the process.
Exactly, exactly. And we can see that albeit the changes technologically were huge for us. It was
Yeah.
quite rapid, in fact, on the second application, that we evolved from kind of very paperwork based systems previously to being a lot of our administration was then online, we'd SharePoint. So these were all great advantages to us. But the accreditation, when you look at the first and the second, you can see that mapping of
Yeah.
those changes where they happen. So it's kind of like a little historical piece for the agency to see the rapid growth, kind of visible in the accreditation. So that was really good for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It must be quite nice to have that development mapped out in a way from each
Yeah,
accreditation. So I imagine that's really nice for your organization to look back
absolutely.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really and particularly when there's a change of management or a change of
Yeah.
CEO, equally from where we've come to this stage here now, it's been a great comfort when you do have that change management because then they can see it very visibly. So it's just been really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Definitely. And you talked a little bit about it already, but with the assessment day, it'd be really interesting to know kind of how you find that process in itself. I know it's one of my favorite parts of the process as an assessor come in to visit the service. So I'd love to hear a bit
Mm.
more about your experience of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can say like for me, I beforehand, I suppose if I was to go back a little bit, just a tiny bit, it was kind of like, when you don't know what to expect, you're obviously anxious.
Yeah.
And you're kind of conscious around doing everything, what's needed but the actual day itself, I have to say, is huge pleasure. And I can very confidently say that because my colleagues as well found it not in any way intrusive because it was very gentle in the sense of like you being there, but not being there as the case may be. It's like you're listening in, you're observing, you're asking really, really good informative questions. And they felt they were absolutely delighted, the staff that were on site. For me personally, it was enjoyable in the sense that, well, you guys are so gentle in the sense of like, this is fine and this is what we need, but you're very clear, which I think is a critical part for us as well around, yes, you have X, Y, and Z, but you're very clear in asking the further questions of after the evidence that you've received. It's like getting clarity. So for me, that's really useful in the way you deliver that. It's like, it's a very obviously serious piece of work. However, you make it that it's like yep, we've got this. Can you explain to me this and how that works, or how you could do this in a different way? But also the when you do make those suggestions or have those ideas, what I really enjoyed was that you had examples, you had set processes that worked in other agencies. May not always fit for purpose, but the bones, the skeletons of those processes were really useful. So you'd say, actually, this is what we've seen and can be used in other helplines. And I found that absolutely, really, really helpful because it then gives you the confidence to say, okay, this works elsewhere. So in fact, some of the templates you gave me on our last day, and the team were able to, extract the various examples for the call auditing and, really useful because it's like, we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're doing it
Yeah.
one way, but here's a streamlined way to look at it. It's so useful. So that's what I enjoyed about it, that it wasn't like, you're not doing this. It's like, this is how you could do it in a more streamlined fashion. So that's what I really enjoyed about it, that it wasn't like a criticism in a sense, but it was supportive. It was
Yeah.
very supportive. So that was for me personally. I found it very useful on the day. And I suppose what I did feel at the end of it, when I brought in my different colleagues, and our team lead and volunteers, I was really quite proud, because they felt equally very kind of confident after it, and they felt like the questions were very important, but also very focused on the self-care and how they look after themselves in the work, because it is very unique, bespoke work. And so they were very, very felt very confident after having those individual interviews as well.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear how much you enjoy the actual assessment day. And
Mm,
I think that's one of the things for us as assessors as well. We learn
mm.
just as much from you guys when we come and visit your services as much as you
Yeah,
learn from us when sharing best practice. So we always kind of like to emphasize that it's very much a supportive process. So it's really nice to know that
absolutely.
that's how you felt during it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely did. And I suppose then when it's finished, it's like, yeah, that was good. And I suppose what you don't, I suppose for me as well, and going back to management and kind of, giving those effort, I felt very kind of affirmed in the work. But yeah, there are very, quite, specific recommendations, absolutely, all making sense. But I felt kind of quite affirmed in the work. It's kind of like, this is an accreditation process. However, it's a real affirmation of the work we've done to date. So I kind of felt very affirmed in it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things we always like to say is that the process is such a good way to celebrate everything you're doing as
Yes,
a service. So
for
it's
sure.
really nice to hear that that's how you felt during the process and actually just it brought up a lot of pride for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I did. I felt very confident. And again, I know there's work to be done on the recommendations. I'm very aware that we're highlight, and we have a bit of we have a change management system currently going on, which is going great. But it does give you line of sight of what needs to be done as well. So whilst we have our day jobs and very much a lot of work, the recommendations are really a really nice benchmark to have to kind of keep us on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've talked a bit about the recommendations, and that's something that's included as part of your report alongside the achievements. So it
Yeah.
would be really nice to know kind of how you've used that report since being
Mm.
provided with it. Kind of have you shared it with any colleagues or external partners? Yeah, just to know a bit more about that.
Yes, indeed. In fact, one of the first things I did, we have a management team structure, which works
Mm,
really well, obviously headed by our CEO. So one of the first things I did, obviously, when we got the accreditation, the Q mark was
mm,
finalized, I shared it with my management team and my
mm,
colleagues. And equally, then it was great for them to see kind of obviously the work that was done in like by our team and our service and the level of information that was put up on the files and all the
mm,
files that were shared. So that was really good for them to see, but also to highlight that this is very much a team effort,
yeah,
that it's not just around specifically targeting at the helpline, it's the whole organizational as a whole. And so it
yeah,
also gives them a confidence. And I think for me, it was a great confidence for our CEO to see the level of work that's actually done. A lot of people wouldn't know the intricacies of how you do your business on the helpline for sure. But it was great that we can actually showcase that as to that level and that micro
yeah.
level of information that's shared. So yeah, I began with that. And then coincidentally, it was really great because we've had a new head of services appointed
Mm,
who is now looking after the four key services in the organization collectively. So that was really useful for her, so that she could actually see intricately what we do as a helpline. She's very au fait with the service for sure, but it's been really helpful for her now to work with me on the recommendations because what she's
mm,
doing is an organizational piece policy on the four frontline services. So this is a really good benchmark for her.
mm,
So that's where I found it very useful that the organization can
yeah.
see where those recommendations are. And I
Mm,
suppose one of the things which is really useful is kind of like, timelining these recommendations
mm.
as well. Now, I know I've to submit some over to you fairly soon, but with Paula on board now, it's great because she'll then get line of sight for what's next. So yeah, it's been
Amazing.
it's been a really useful piece of work.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been very beneficial in terms of not just helping to educate the wider organization about the
Mm,
amount of work that was put in to the
mm,
submission, but also helping to support newer staff coming in to understand the wider
absolutely.
range of the service. So it's really
Absolutely.
interesting to hear the kind of different
Mm,
benefits of the report.
yeah. Absolutely, yeah, it has been really good, and like I say, it gives us on a really good, solid footing for going forward. And again, it gives us also line of sight for planning. So that's the other part of it as well, which I find really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And guess because you've talked a little bit about some of the benefits already, I'm really curious, since being certified, what would you say have been some of the major benefits that you've noticed for the organization?
Yeah, I mean, there are varied ones. One of the most important ones for us is our with our funders, which we've
Mm,
also had a change in funding structures.
yeah.
We were formerly with the agency with TUSLA, which is the Child and Family Services in Ireland. We've had a new departmental shift where there are new funders are in a separate agency of their own, which is the Cohen services, which covers all domestic and sexual violence services in the Republic. So for us, having the accreditation was a great step forward because they've seen now actually
Mm,
the work. They can see also the visible work that's being done on the helpline. And because we're on that national footing, it's even more critical for us to have it and to be certified. Because with the therapy services, they have their accreditation and have their own set practices and benchmarks that they have to achieve. However, with the helpline, it's varied, but it's an organizational standard, which is really good. So that gives us then great confidence that we can stand over our accreditation. So for our funders, for definite, and then of course, just for our service users in general, it's like it makes sense for us to have the quality mark against our websites and all materials against our upcoming campaigns and all of that. So, for instance, we have currently, we last year we had a Signs of Hope campaign, which was a great success, and it was targeted to the helpline. And we've a revisit on that this year now, which only started on Monday, in fact, the next tranche of that campaign, Signs of Light, which is a forwarding on of that campaign, again focused on the helpline number, which gives us again that confidence to say this is an accredited helpline service. So for all of those very obvious reasons, that's the huge benefits for us, our stakeholders, our service users, and our funders. So yeah, we've been really lucky to have it in, timely as well. So yeah, it's there. They're just and for many, staff alike as well, that affirmation and that we're working in a service that has achieved these standards and have a
Mhm.
consistency across the whole 24-hour helpline.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really useful to hear firsthand
Yeah,
experience of the benefits, particularly with
mm,
funding. I think that
for
given the
sure.
financial climate at the moment for charities, it's really useful to know that
Yeah,
actually the standard was really beneficial for your funders. So it's really interesting
absolutely.
to hear that.
Absolutely, yeah. It gives us that confirmation and I suppose confidence in negotiating further funding, etc.
Yeah.
We're looking at new developments for the helpline, hopefully for 26. And within
Mm.
that strategy alone, in the funding that we've put in for is to increase staffing, but also to have an additional service with WhatsApp. Now, again, we're still in a little bit of space and waiting.
Yeah.
But again, the accreditation supports that, to
Mm.
say that, look, with another service, we need reinforcements. But within that, then having the accreditation gives us that extra layer of confidence when we're applying.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear more about kind of what initiatives have taken place or taking place
Yeah.
kind of as you've been going through the standard. And I'm really curious as well, just in terms of the process, was there anything about it that you found particularly challenging?
I have to be quite honest that for me personally, the challenges really arose really around, and this would be, and it's a lesson learned, is
Mhm.
the cross communication with my teams. So in the learning for me, I think timing and
Yeah.
spacing it out because there is way enough time because the process begins way back 6 months in advance. So for me now, the learning is that whilst not we've had having the processes in place and all of that is one thing. I would say for me, a learning was to be kind of stricter with timing,
Mm.
um, in processing each stage and each question. If I was to give any advice to anyone preparing for this, I would say set up your team in advance of, to kind of be aware of when it's starting, set up the teams way in advance. So whilst I was setting the teams up, it was kind of during. So I would say be, a learning for me, do it well in advance, pace it, and then have reviews far more frequently. Um, so that would have been a big learning. The process I found, yes, whilst it's a big piece of work. However, once it's paced well, it doesn't become like an anvil, it doesn't become this onerous task. So, and then having the ongoing support from the partnership, including yourself, Michelle, having that soundboarding, am I okay with this or not, as the case may be. If anything, I would say I'd be utilizing you guys more. um, that would be another learning because you're there and readily available to do so. So I think for me, it's kind of like, yeah, lesson learned to reach out more because that wasn't that you guys weren't there, but when you were there, it was absolutely brilliant to get that soundboarding and kind of guiding as you
Mm.
go. So that's been really useful learning for me. I would, again, being my official second round of doing the administration side, I have learned very much so timing and the collaborations to start way sooner. So
Yeah.
that would have been something again that came eventually, but I would say if I was to processing again, I would be setting those things up way in advance.
Yeah, I imagine many helplines will find that useful to know, especially in terms of timing. We're definitely not shy in saying that it is a big piece of work. So I
Indeed.
completely agree that it's useful to make sure that you've got a timeline and regular review meetings and so forth. So
Absolutely.
absolutely
Yeah.
agree with that. And I think one of the things we like to emphasize as a services team is that we are always there throughout the whole process. So
Yeah.
for nobody to be shy to reach out to
That's
us.
it.
So
Yeah.
it's nice
Yeah.
that you feel like you can get in touch with us to get that support.
Oh, absolutely. And I think sometimes when you're doing something and you feel it's kind of all of your responsibility, well, it is your responsibility for
Mm,
sure. You're project managing it, but it is important to know that actually you're not alone, that,
mm,
you guys are right alongside that. And then, of course, to reach out further. So yeah, timing is really important, but also to really recognize that you're not on your own in that there's any amount of support there as you're doing it. So yeah. I would
yeah,
definitely say that
absolutely.
to others to absolutely reach out. Not that I want to cause you more work, but I would say that it's kind of, you can have a bit of a reluctance sometimes and kind of go, oh, is that okay? But no, I think, and every opportunity I've received very positive responses, very timely. It was very good in that sense, and that was my experience.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really nice to hear the feedback as well. And I'm curious, obviously, we've talked a bit about timing as a tip and also to reach out to services as another tip. But I'm curious, is there anything else you would say to other helplines who are considering going through the standard?
I would say reach out to other helplines as well who've had it, for instance, or have been through the process, or, definitely I know my colleagues in Women's Aid would have began their processes way before ourselves. I think about it, they're about a year ahead of us, possibly. And I think gaining support and information just around experience, to talk to other helplines that I think it does kind of, not the reason the word force you, but it does spark you to reach out to, I would say, definitely reach out to other helplines who've achieved it and talk to them, outside of the Helplines Partnership, but also to talk to other people in the trenches doing it. And I think that's the good thing in that it does get you to think that there's a lot of commonality with helplines and their struggles and the challenges. And if you're doing one specific role, if it's obviously helplines are very specific to their core service users, but a lot of the challenges are very common if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So it's good to know that you're not on your own. And so advice, I would say reach out to other helplines, and of course really do check in what the Helplines Partnership are offering with regard to webinars, networking sessions. Keep an eye on all of those bits and pieces that can inform you, because again, I wouldn't have had, and I suppose timing again, I go back to that in my last accreditation process, I wouldn't have linked in as much as I did
Mm.
the last time, and looking out for those webinars and support workshops around the accreditation. Get as much as you can from them. And if you can't go yourself, send a colleague to go and glean whatever information comes across. And so, yeah, that would be one of the pieces I'd say, that it does trigger you to reach out to other services, if you can. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I think that networking is so important, and one of the things we always like to
Mm.
emphasize and promote
Absolutely.
Helplines Partnership. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting to hear that the networking we've provided has been beneficial, not just for your organization as a whole, but for the Helpline Standard process as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's key to it as well. And as I said, helplines are very bespoke and niche to the service user for whatever the service you're providing. But what I've learned definitely in recent years is that there's a lot of common challenges, and that, you can share that and not to feel on your own. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And finally, just as we're kind of wrapping this up, and just to get a look back at your whole experience with the Helpline Standard, is there anything else you'd like to share about the process that you feel other helplines might find helpful to know?
I would say, thinking on, if it's your first accreditation, and if you're contemplating and going into the process, like I said, going back over a few things, timing, reaching out to your colleagues, But firstly, reaching out to similar helplines and looking at their experience. Obviously, the Helplines Partnership being a key factor in it. But I think for me, definitely it was, the feeling of not being on your own. That however small or big your helpline is, it is a huge benefit regarding, the whole process is a benefit itself, but it really does bring it right back to core principles of achieving something that you can stand over. It's like my one point, I suppose my parting thoughts have always been having the accreditation reaches far wider than you might think
Mhm.
because it's the future callers you're thinking about. Okay, what any future callers that may ring, it's like having that layer of confidence that actually, you know what, this service is and does what it says on the tin, basically.
Yeah.
But it really is about thinking your future service users. And in the accreditation process, you will achieve that. You will give them that information, that knowledge, where to find things on your website. Structurally, are you meeting the caller's needs? Are you saying what you're doing? Are you doing what you're saying? You know what I mean? So it's like giving that confidence to those callers who haven't rang you yet. So that's for me the biggest bonus in it.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way of putting it, especially thinking about future service users as well and how the accreditation can benefit not just the current service users, but anyone who reaches out
Yeah,
to the service in the future. So I think a lot of helplines will find that really beneficial to know if they're considering going through the standard.
I think so. I think it's definitely, like I say, it's unique. I'm so glad it's there because when you search for, a particular confidence, security, quality assurance, for a helpline, it is absolutely the answer to that. So
Mm.
it is definitely worth exploring for sure.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for taking the time to chat
My
with me
pleasure.
today and share a bit more about your experience as well. It's really nice to hear firsthand of all the benefits that you've found from it. And I know many helplines will find your experience really useful. So thank you.
I'm so glad, Michelle, to be here. As I said, anything I really can't emphasize enough around the benefits of it. And I'm just so glad that, yeah, that the of other helplines, if they find this useful, I'll be really great. I'll be so glad if they find it useful because I think for me, beginning it, there's so many questions and having that, kind of confirmation, as I say, of that it's absolutely a well worthwhile process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. So, no, thank you so much again. I really appreciate
My
it.
pleasure. Thank you so much.